Ireland is so racist that even white people get racist language used against them. As you can see, I'm a white lady. And when I was growing up in Ards in the north of Ireland, I had all sorts of racist language used towards me and my family, in particular my mum and my brother, because they have curly hair. I can blow dry my hair and it looks straight. They can't. Their hair is pretty like big and curly. But we had the N word and the P word used against us pretty regularly, to be honest. It died down a little bit once I got to like sort of 14-ish, but yeah, it was quite intense. And this was like, you know, people shouting at you, people saying it to you just like in school and things like that. My brother got like a nickname, if you can call it that, which was racist. So yeah, if I've had that experience and I'm white, can you fucking imagine what it's like for people who are people of colour right now when there are racist mobs walking the streets looking for people to attack, when there's little girls being sexually assaulted and attacked in the street, like what happened in Dublin. Ireland is extremely, extremely racist, and I know that we want to feel like we are this really welcome and wonderful place, and we can be, but we're also very, very racist. And I think it's going to take more white people speaking about the racism that is rampant there, because it can't all be on people of colour to speak about this when they are the ones experiencing the most of the harm, all of the harm. And like I say, if people can be using racist language towards me and my pinky complexion, just imagine what it must be like for people who do not have white privilege. Irish people are rightly known for having solidarity with Palestine and people from other oppressed groups. One thing that is on the rise massively in Ireland at the moment is racism, and people in particular who have no geographical understanding of the world will make comments that I see often online about Nigerians. They think that every black person who comes to Ireland is Nigerian. And Irish people have so much in common with Nigerians, in particular Biafran Nigerians, that we might not even be aware of. Nigeria got its independence from Britain in 1960. Following that, there was the Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Nigerian Biafran War. Britain supplied Nigeria with arms and also helped Nigeria blockade the Biafran population and the Republic of Biafra. As a result, 2 million Igbo people were murdered in Biafra. Igbo is the, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as far as I'm aware, it is the ethnicity of the people of Biafra. Although I think Igbo people live all across Nigeria, but there's a particular concentration of Igbo people in Biafra. And like I say, the British government supplied the Nigerian army with arms to carry out this genocide. Now, if you know anything about the North, you will know that the British state was in collusion with various different authorities and paramilitaries in the north of Ireland. And that once the British state leaves, although obviously it's never left the north, but once the British state leaves a country that it's colonised, it doesn't really leave. And so whenever Irish people are making these comments about Nigerian people, they do not realise how similar Nigeria and Ireland are in terms of the legacy of British colonialism. On top of that, every Nigerian person I have ever met has the same level of pride about being Nigerian as Irish people do about being Irish. We also have very similar cultures in terms of the religion. Also, sectarianism between Protestants and Catholics and, you know, other religions is pretty common in Nigeria as well. We are a very, very similar peoples, and Irish people are just showing their ignorance once again whenever they make these kind of comments. We have much more in common with Nigerian people who have suffered as a result of Britain than we do with Britain, or people who are calling themselves patriots which is common from Anglo-American alliances. I just had to block someone who left the same comment over and over and over and over in any of my videos about immigration. And the comment was, you just want boatloads of Nigerians coming into Ireland so you can, the men, genuinely. They left this comment all over. I was actually going to stitch it and then they left it again just there now, and I was like, I'm just going to block this person. But for anybody else who has the same sentiment as that person, I just want to make you aware that Irish people, in particular people from the north, have so much in common with Nigerians you might not even be aware of it. So Nigeria got its independence in 1960, that is from Britain. And in 1967 until 1970, there was the Nigerian Civil War. Now, the Nigerian Civil War was between, as you can see here, it's also known as the Nigerian Biafra War. So it was between Nigeria and a state of Nigeria which called itself the Republic of Biafra. This image is from Google, so some people are, there's a bit of debate about where Biafra is, but this is from Google and this is where it says it is. So it's on the southeast coast, bordering Cameroon, you can see. And much like Ireland, when Britain withdrew, when Britain was pushed out of Nigeria and Nigeria got its independence, Britain left behind a situation in which war broke out amongst the people who were from that nation. This war led to what people call the Biafran blockade or the Biafran famine, which is where the Nigerian government prevented food and other essentials, daily essentials, from going into Biafra. During that time, the two and a half years of the war, there were between 500,000 and 2 million Biafran people who died of starvation. Do you see what I'm getting at? Also, 100,000 people died, military casualties. 100,000 people died, and between 5,000 and 2 million, there's no way to really know how much it was, but it's loads of scholars suggest it's at the higher end, also died. Britain also helped Nigeria to carry out this, I'm going to call it genocide. So you'll see here, with British help, the Nigerian government blockaded Biafra in order to starve its population. Also, during the Biafran War, the British government was the main supplier of arms to the Nigerian army. The Biafran people, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the Biafran people are mostly Igbo, which is IGBO, which is like ethnicity, and also I believe has like a religious aspect to it as well, or a spiritual aspect to it. And yeah, more than 2 million Igbo people were murdered in Biafra. So when Irish people make these sort of comments about people of different races from around the world, they don't realise how much Irish people have in common with, in particular, countries that were formerly owned by Britain. And then when Britain left, Britain sided with the state and, you know, carried out a genocide against the people. It's the same thing they do over and over. And just from a personal anecdote, like I live in South London now, and when I moved to London, I noticed that in particular car boot sales and like market stalls and things like that, you would be shocked at the amount, oh, and also people, homeless people as well, you would be shocked at the amount of people who are Irish and Nigerian at these things. Like car boot sales, it's always Irish people or Nigerian people selling at them, or like the yuppie Depop girlies now. And whenever I used to do like homeless outreach, it was often men from West Africa or Irish men. So there's a lot more in common, in particular with Nigerian people, than Irish people might expect. I've also never met a Nigerian person who wasn't like brimming with pride to be Nigerian, in the same way that Irish people are as well. We actually have so much in common. Parenting as well. The way that we're parented is really, really similar. So yeah, we have a lot in common. Look who left this comment. Let me show you a book. David Olusoga. Hope I'm saying that right. Black and British, A Short Essential History. Black people have been in Britain for thousands of years. Thousands of years. I really suggest that people read. You need to read. Loyalists have no idea who they really are. I agree. This book, Northern Protestants on Shifting Ground, is by Susan Mackay. Susan Mackay grew up a Protestant in Derry, and she is a really esteemed writer, Irish writer. She has written for like the New York Times, The Guardian, The New Yorker, and she's got a number of books. She interviewed me for this book and like said what I said in it, which was that, so I was speaking to her in particular about middle class Protestants, because the articles that I'd written were about the rugby boys, speaking about how the loyalist or the Protestant rugby boys, you know, the ones who end up just miserable cunts working in like middle management, just really red in the face, you know, those ones. I was talking about them ones, and you know, I was talking about how like the loyalism intersects with classism, because they really do grow up believing that they're going to be the man of the house. Like they grow up with this mindset that they're going to be all be Trump. They think they're all going to be Trump or professional rugby players, and then they fail, and then they're angry for the rest of their days. They peaked at 16 when they were on the rugby team in school, and then they're angry for the rest of the days. And it's the same with the ones who aren't like that. It's the same with the ones who are out in the streets doing all this nonsense. They're just full of anger. Anger is all they know, because Britain used them essentially to come here and leave them. They know that Britain doesn't identify with them, that it thinks they're Irish, that it thinks they're scum, and they're just miserable. And before anybody says anything, I know you can be a Protestant without being a loyalist. I just want to reply to this because I had another comment from someone saying you can't like Texas because Texas has racists in it. And this comment, I've already replied to it, but I just want to make a video about it, about this topic in general. Being ashamed, I'm from Ards, right? Like literally my family are Ards and Carrick. Two of the most kind of like Protestant, unionist, loyalist, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of flags. There's a lot of flags in those places, right? I also had family in Kilcooley, in Bangor, Rathcoole, in Belfast, although I don't speak to them anymore. And my family home is the Glen in Ards, right? So I've grown up in places that are full of flags. You do not need to be ashamed of where you're from or where you live, because some people there, a very small amount of people there, what is my hair doing? A very small amount of people there put flags everywhere. They want us to feel like they are the ones who own the land. That's why they're putting flags up. But they don't. And we don't need to feel ashamed about it. I love Ards. Yes, Ards has its problems, as does the rest of the north. But Ards is a really cool town. Like if you were to go out for a Saturday afternoon and you want to go to some cafes and get some bakery stuff, go to some boutiques, you'd be hard pressed to find a town that has more going for it for a wee poodle around than Ards. So do not let these people make you feel ashamed of where you're from. That's exactly what they want us to feel. It's interesting you as a white person said this, and something I've noticed, because I made a video talking about like as a foreign person observing racial segregation in America, the only people who have said I'm wrong are white. Also, a lot of black people live in Texas as well. And trying to suggest that you can't like Texas because it has white supremacists and fascists in it lets them win. It means that you identify Texas as white supremacy and fascism. The most racist people I came across in America were white upper middle class people in New York. And this is just reeks of stinking levels of white privilege and classism, and I'm guessing that you're from the north as well. This is exactly the kind of reason that people don't talk about racism, and white people should talk about racism. It's very important for white people to talk about racism and for us to talk about how we see it and to, you know, respond when we see it happening. And this is the kind of thing that shuts that conversation down immediately. You think you're calling me out. You think you're suggesting that I'm a racist when actually you're proving my point. Around October last year, my brother saw the Nazi SS flag and the Israeli flag on the same pole. I will call people munters, I will call people cunts, I'll call people uneducated. Do you know what I do not call people, and I will never call people idiots? And the reason I don't call people idiots is because it's not helpful. I actually think it is important to engage with people on their terms. So you see some wee fella saying some stupid comment about loyalism, and then his profile picture is him with a fucking BB gun with his mates, making fun of that, weaponizing shame and making fun of that is on their terms. That's what they're trying to do to me. If I just go, idiots, you're fanning the flames. I really do not believe, I don't believe in fighting all of them. I would never leave the house if I fought all of them all day. But I do believe that it is worth engaging with people if you know how to do it on their terms. That's why I call them munters. Nobody wants to be called a munter. These people are openly on the internet. I follow loads of these accounts, right? They're openly coming online and going, oh, you're going to call us racist? We don't care. They don't care. They don't care. Munters, though. Bogging, though. I'm not trying to speak truth to idiots. I'm just slobbering at them. I've used the phrase on here this week, proximity to whiteness. Not too much, because I don't like using that kind of language, but there was times where I had to use it. In relation, in particular, to Irishness. What is Irishness? Because sometimes Irish people say that Irish people aren't white and all that. And whenever I say proximity to whiteness, I don't mean being close to white people. That's not what it means. What it means is, how close are you to the people at the very top of the racial hierarchy, right? The people at the very top are upper class white people. Proximity means, how close can you get to them? Upwards. Also, when we talk about people doing things to give them proximity to whiteness, it means clambering on the people that are below them to get there. And I have a really perfect example. I've just been reading the comments on an article about an Irish 1,000 metre record has been broken by an Irishman who happens to be black. His name is Israel Olatunde. Hope I'm saying that right. Look at this comment. Israel Olatunde, such a fine traditional Irish name. Look who left this comment. Now, I don't know what language that is, but I'm guessing it's like Eastern European or something. This is exactly what people mean when they say proximity to whiteness. It's, how can I use where I am, how can I use the people here or how I feel to get me up. That's what proximity to whiteness is in one snapshot. And just to give it the context of what I was speaking about this week, this is what white Americans did in the States. So when they say that they were slaves too, they were using proximity to whiteness to get ahead. USA, Ulster started all. That is the title of a chapter in my book, my novel, Influenced. And in that chapter, the dad of the antagonist character, who's called Liam Hamilton, who's just, you know, like your proper horrible unionist, grammar school, rich thug. His dad is obsessed with Ulster started all. He says this all the time. And he goes on this big rant about Andrew Jackson, which Ulster people do. These are lampposts in Carrickfergus. When I was last home, I saw Trump 2020, whatever it was, 2024, obviously, flags in Carrickfergus on the lampposts. Obviously, that's a Confederate flag. That's a paramilitary flag. I don't really know what one that is. This was a Nazi flag, but I hid the swastika. And then obviously the Union Jack. Sometimes, like I say, they will also have an Israeli flag. An Israeli flag beside the swastika. What is interesting about these flags is the language that the far right are using, that the British are using, that the Irish are using, that the MAGA people are using, is patriot. They are all united now under the idea of patriotism. We've never really had Irish patriotism. It's always been Irish republicanism or Irish nationalism, and it's been very tied to anti-British sentiments. And the Unionists have always hated the Irish. But everyone is rising together under this patriotism, and it's really, really scary, and it's the same fucking people. And they're shameless. They're utterly, utterly, utterly shameless. They do not care. If you say they're racist, they go, yeah, no, I am, and what? You can't talk to them. Loyalists aren't Irish MAGA. MAGA are loyalists. This is Carrickfergus. Remember that name. You'll see the Confederate flag, the Union Jack. That is a Nazi flag, but I've blanked out the swastika. If you don't know me, I'm Goodwill Hunting. I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, stroke the north of Ireland, and I'm using TikTok to get a book deal for my novel Influenced. That was a lot. Look at this. President Andrew Jackson, the 7th president of the United States. He was born into a predominantly Ulster Scots area of South Carolina. His parents left Carrickfergus in County Antrim. That is where some of my family live. They are called Ulster Scots because they are Scots British who planted Ulster, the Ulster plantation. So they came to Ulster and they are still there. And now in the UK, right across the UK, we're seeing this rise of the far right, which is the MAGA far right. It's the same people. They call themselves patriots. We've never really had that language, the language of patriot in Ireland before. But these folks are putting flags up, the British flag up all around the UK. But in Ulster, in Carrickfergus, the British flag is up and people have been hanging, loyalists have been hanging the British flag in Ireland, in Carrickfergus, in County Antrim, for hundreds of years. And something that's really important to note about these loyalist type people, they really do believe that the early foundation of America, that those people were good people. They are the same people. They are hardline fundamentalist Protestant Christians. They are racist. They are homophobic. They're just about bigoted in every way. Also in my profile, there's a video called USA, Ulster Started All. I'm talking about a chapter from my book. That's the title of a chapter from my novel, where a character goes on an unhinged rant about this, because there are people who are living in Ulster right now who believe that these people are good. This is a raging hot take, but bear with me. So I have this chapter in my book. This is my first time holding my phone, like even slightly off, right? I have this chapter in my book, and it's called USA, Ulstermen Started All. So the character in my book of Liam, who is the antagonist, right? His dad goes on this big rant to him. These are both like, you know, like your proper middle class Protestants. Like Liam's called Liam Hamilton. He's a proper, you know, like a proper rugby boy. Like my dad was actually an old boy, that type, right? Proper like Ulster though, really, really into their Ulster. Which is a kind of funny thing, because like I always think of Protestants, I'm like, oh, they're really, really British, but there's loads of them that are like, I'm an Ulster man first and foremost. Anyways, so yeah, his dad goes on this big unhinged rant about how Ulster men started all, how the North should really be the capital of the world because it was us that took, you know, Christianity and whatever else like to the Americas. I remember being in newsagents in, I can't remember, Ballymena, somewhere around Ballymena, and seeing a newspaper that had on it like Beyonce's Ulster Heritage, and I remember being like, what the fuck? And it was a unionist regional newspaper, and it was like talking about how great it was that Beyonce's like lineage had, you know, some Ulsterman in it, and I was thinking to myself, that's because of slavery. Like, these people are maniacs, loyalists, Ulster mad maniacs, and they're in loads of positions of power around the world, or their lineages, but also they're literally taking over. There are people out in the streets right now in Canary Wharf in London who are getting on, like, in particular, loyalists are mad loyalists. That's actually exactly what I talk about. If you don't know me, I'm Goodwill Hunting. I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, stroke the north of Ireland, and I'm using TikTok to get a book deal for my novel Influenced. It's come to my attention, because people have tagged me in it, that, and a content creator has taken my videos out of context about the Irish immigration crisis. So I post about the corporate colonialism of Ireland. That is, that 4 out of 5 homes purchased in Ireland last year was purchased by a corporate entity. And the Irish government is giving these corporate entities tax breaks in order to do this. Meanwhile, the far right, the racist far right, is on the rise in Ireland. And these people are blaming people of colour, immigrants to Ireland, for the difficulty in purchasing a home, when the actual problem is coming from the corporate colonialism of Ireland, the tax breaks that the Irish government are giving. Despite what this content creator has said, and she didn't mention the race element at all. My video was about the fact that 10,000 white Americans moved to Ireland last year, mostly upper middle class as well, moved to Ireland last year without any kind of backlash. Meanwhile, the Irish far right has been out in the streets protesting against immigration, and they've also been attacking people, burning people of colour out of their homes. Really bad things are happening. And yeah, I post about the hypocrisy of the racist far right. I also post about, like I say, the corporate colonialism of Ireland and Anglo-American, that means British and American allegiances, which are interfering in Ireland and diminishing the pro-Palestine solidarity that Ireland has long held. So yeah, American havoc is most definitely happening in Ireland, and Irish people need to remember that we are first and foremost an island that stands with oppressed people, especially the people of Palestine. I have an entire account called Stop the Bots dedicated to the corporate colonisation of Ireland. I've never once said nor suggested that Americans are the reason that Ireland has a housing crisis. That's absurd. What I am talking about is the hypocrisy in the far right in Ireland, who are blaming black and brown people who are coming to Ireland, and they are saying stop the boats, they're saying Ireland's full, but they have zero interest in the 10,000 white Americans that came to Ireland. The housing crisis in Ireland is being caused by the corporate colonisation. 4 out of 5 homes bought in Ireland last year were bought by corporate landlords, that is hedge funds. I also wrote a Substack article on this last night called To Be Irish is to Protest, and it's literally about the corporate colonisation of Ireland, the rise of the far right, and the hypocrisy of the far right when it comes to Irish American immigration. It is anti-Irish to be anti-immigration. I'm Goodwill, I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland stroke the north of Ireland, and I am using TikTok to get a book deal for my book Influence. I have been speaking on here about the rise of the far right and just ongoing polarisation in Ireland in regards to politics, but in regards to our communities. And I have spoken about the way that we now inhabit a post-truth society, and that's one of those terms where you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But really, it just means that fact is obsolete. And yes, you could argue, have we ever lived in a society driven by fact? Well, somewhat. But we now exist in a society driven entirely by emotions, and that's a key point of post-truth society. It's society driven by like emotions, personal beliefs and values. It's only exacerbated by algorithms as well. And the far right in Ireland is on the rise, undoubtedly, and they do not care about being called racist. They do not care about being called scum. They do not care about being called any of the names that the hard left are putting onto them, hoping it'll shame them. And the writer Zadie Smith, who is a British writer but from a working class background, she's also of Jamaican heritage, from London, said in an interview a while ago that shame has a place and that actually it's not entirely a bad thing, because we now live in a society that is shameless and is ran by shameless people, and I agree with her. Ireland has never had this type of really crazed, hard right anti-immigration rhetoric. We have also never aligned ourselves with the fucking British. But now that's happening, and we are seeing a huge movement of people who are coming out to the streets and celebrating British mentality, British colonial mindset. Being Irish is nothing to do with being white. Being Irish is a state of mind. It is a feeling. It is, for me, spiritual, and it's about growing up in a place that has known the meaning of oppression and fighting it on the daily. And it is inherently anti-Irish to go out and join with people waving a fucking Union Jack on the street saying stop the boats. Irish people are entirely reliant on immigration. We have one of the biggest diasporas in the world for being such a tiny, tiny place. There's an Irish bar in every country, every city in the world. And it does not make any sense to be anti-immigration. It is anti-Irish to have that mindset. And the British are relying on the fact that we don't know any better. So I am replying to this guy because I find it very interesting, the point he's making, okay? In terms of revealing a lot about himself. He says, Ghana is popular with Western women. It's like Thailand except for white women looking for black men. Something I have noticed is white men are absolutely obsessed with the sexuality of black men. I am a heterosexual woman and date all types of men, truly, all kinds of men. And I have to be honest, white men are obsessed with black men. They're obsessed. They are totally hyperfixated on the sexuality of men, not just black men, I suppose, men who are not white. They're absolutely hyperfixated on their sexuality. And to the point that they ask questions like this or make points like this. I've had white men ask me about, ask me intimate details about men that I've dated in the past. This is also connected to the comments I got yesterday. Multiple comments, there were like over 10 from white men saying, you may hope and pray, or, watch out in case you or your family get raped by a black or brown man. That's actually what they said, and I could go through and compile like a video of the comments, but I can't be asked at the moment. But yeah, they're absolutely hyperfixated, and I just want to make it really clear again. The most scared I've ever been is when I lived in Ardingly in East Belfast. I just made a video just there showing you places I've travelled. Lived in Ghana, like I said, for 3 months. I was working in Ghana, like I wasn't there for... And it's funny, you're projecting again, because white men go to Thailand, so you're assuming that the only reason I would go to another country is for sex. But yeah, like I say, I've travelled around the world, and the most threatened and the most scared that I've ever felt in my entire life was walking home at night through Ardingly. I remember whenever Uber came to Belfast, I was like, thank fuck, because it was really hard to get a taxi sometimes, on the phone. And I was like, thank fuck, because I was so scared walking home at night in East Belfast. And yeah, your hyperfixation on sex for everyone, but in particular for women and men of colour, shows me that there's really something to be concerned about with you and all of you once you comment like this. There are racist lynch mobs going around Belfast, harassing, intimidating and threatening men of colour. This comment says, what blows my mind about this is how it wouldn't be allowed in most working class nationalist areas. So, like I say, most of the videos are coming out of East Belfast. And one thing I will say on this is in 2020 and 2021, I had a van. And something that I used to do was go and collect like free beds that people were giving away on Gumtree or Facebook, and then leave them off at the homes of refugee families in Belfast. I would say about 70% of those homes were in West Belfast. A couple were in South, very few in East. Additionally, when I would meet the refugees, the families, which I did quite often, not just when I was dropping off the beds, but with like volunteer work I was doing with an organisation, the ones from West, I would sometimes give people lifts home and stuff like that. So I was getting to talk to them, and the people from West would say they loved Belfast, they found it to be really welcoming, they felt really safe there. And yeah, I just think it's interesting where the state is placing refugees and asylum seekers, especially families. And yeah, I would say it's probably for good reason. Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland, is a uniquely violent statelet with uniquely violent people, with uniquely hateful people. I'm from there. I love it. I love home. I love my friends and my family at home. But I will say that there's a lot of hateful bastards in the north of Ireland. I've just made a video about the lynch mobs going around Belfast looking for black and brown men to harass, intimidate, threaten, and I'm worried attack. And this is in the same week that the police had to come and escort drag queens to safety after a similar gang turned up at an event that was being hosted in a library and started harassing and intimidating drag queens. Make no mistake, these two things are interconnected. We are suffering from an infiltration of bots and misinformation in Ireland. 71% of online engagement is not real people. And from that, you have people who have zero critical thinking skills, and this is not even me trying to be a bitch, it's just a fact. They have no critical thinking skills. There's a really serious lack of education right across the island of Ireland. A lot of people are illiterate in Ireland. And you have people who are seeing videos on social media and taking everything they say as gospel and at face value. This has led to groups, gangs, including women, who are taken to the streets and harassing, intimidating and threatening anyone that they don't like. This could be if you're queer, this could be if you're black, minority ethnic, if you are visibly of a different religion, like a Muslim. It does not matter who you are. If they don't like the look of you, they will make it known and they will do everything in their power to terrify you. The politicians need to step up immediately and tackle this for what it is, which is organised gang violence. And the police need to intervene and stop before someone is murdered. Someone is going to get murdered by this gang. Belfast has been overrun by a Poundland KKK. I have been gathering videos on here about this, I'm going to call them the Poundland KKK, who are walking around, no shade to Poundland by the way, big fan of Poundland, but they are walking around, seemingly mostly East Belfast, and harassing men of colour. Here's some footage. So this is from one of their videos. Reports of the black man, again, not a sign off him. This is genuinely very, very terrifying. This is the behaviour of the KKK. This is a lynch mob that is going around the street arbitrarily randomly looking for black and minority ethnic men to harass, intimidate, and I'm worried that they also want to attack them. This is another one of the posts. East Belfast, we groom dogs here, not kids. They're calling themselves this, EBFD, and this is why I'm saying that it's neo-paramilitarism. I don't know if that's a phrase or not, but that's what I'm calling it, because they are essentially taking the mode of paramilitary organisations and using it for racist vigilante patrol groups, if I can even call it that. Here is another one, EBFD. I almost don't want to mention this name, but I think it's important to show who they are. The account that I have found is this, Irish Bread Ulster. Now, what you will notice is very interesting about this, right, is it says Irish Bread Ulster. I have spoken on here quite a lot about the bots in Ireland and how bots are bringing together, in a crazy way, they are bringing together the hard right across the board. So you no longer have the same divide that there was between the sectarian sides. You have this kind of new identity of Ireland for the Irish, even if you are of a unionist background. Here is another one. They're trying to say that they provide continuous drop-off and pick-up services. I'm not sure who has asked for that, but yeah, here's another video from them. They are going live as well, so this was at about 1 a.m. last night, and this came up on my live feed, and you can see this is one of the streets in East Belfast and stood outside the house. Here is another video of them as well, and you can see a lot of them are young lads. You can see this here, 1:10 last night. There are loads of videos. I don't know how to embed videos in my videos just yet, but there are loads of videos as well where they are stalking and harassing black and minority ethnic men. They are accusing them of paedophilia. They are saying, I need to see your phone. They're saying, show me your identity. One of them, he says, show me your identity documentations. These men are thugs. They are racist thugs who are using a climate of increasing fear because of the violence that they carry out, right, in our streets and have been carrying out in our streets for decades, to have a vehicle for their racism, and they are going out into the streets at night and harassing people. They are turning up at people's doors at HMO, which is House of Multiple Occupancy. So there's loads of these in East Belfast, 4 or 5 bedroomed houses where loads of people live there. They're turning up at people's doors saying, we have reports that there's 5 people living in this house, and they are forcing people to come out and show their identity documents. They're threatening to take people's phones off them, and the police, who, clearly I have my own issues with, but the police really, really need to take this seriously. This is lynching. This is lynching of Black and minority ethnic men in Belfast, happening, I was going to say in broad daylight, but happening on the streets, and there's tons of them. It's not only men either, there's women out with them as well. And this account has tons and tons of posts. There is another video where they are talking about the boats. They keep talking about the boats. The people in the comments are truly unhinged as well. I've seen comments saying things like, why are you using these Illuminati symbols? Like, these are proper hardline Infowar type nutters. And before any of them say anything to me, which I'm sure they will in the comments, but before anyone says anything to me about I don't live in Belfast or anything, I lived in East Belfast until 2021, so I do have experience of living there for years, and I can tell you now that I've lived all over the world, and like as in really random places, and the most scared I've ever been in my life, period, walking home at night, was when I lived in Ardnley in East Belfast. That's when I was most scared, and it wasn't because of Black or brown men, let me tell you. And I'd just like to remind you that the same fellas that were doing this last year, half of them have been arrested for domestic abuse. Half of them have been arrested for domestic abuse. This is nothing more than gang violence and race hate. It is nothing to do with keeping women safe. Right guys, some people left a comment, a couple of comments, and I've had a few messages about this gang in East Belfast that are going around the streets at night, and they are kind of anti-immigrant thugs, and they're going around the streets and they're saying that they're like protecting our women and children. I have now got quite a few videos. I've got a couple of accounts. I've been on TikTok for like hours last night, trying to like get through it on the algorithm, because obviously they're not coming up for me, but I've now found a couple of accounts and a couple of videos, and yeah, it seems like it's really happening. If anybody has any information about it or anything, please feel free to send it to me. I won't tag you, I won't make your name known, but yeah, I just want to have as much information as possible before I post anything. It's pretty scary, I'm not gonna lie. It's essentially paramilitary. It's like neo-paramilitarism. I don't know if that's a thing, but they are branding themselves like a paramilitary group. So they're branding themselves like UVF or whatever. I think they're calling themselves East Belfast something. But it's essentially a bunch of lads in tracksuits with like 4 teeth between them, going around screaming at people, harassing people, sitting outside people's doors, knocking on doors when they know it's an HMO. So yeah, if anybody has any information, please send it to me, and then I'll make a video as soon as I've collated enough, Half of the fellas that were out in the streets last year protecting our women are women beaters, actually arrested as well. Almost half of the people arrested during the race-related riots in Belfast last August previously had been reported to the police for domestic abuse. 23 out of 48 people have been arrested, actually arrested. Now, some people have left comments talking about this gang that's going around East Belfast, and I'm trying to confirm, I've seen videos and stuff, but I'm trying to confirm that like it's definitely the same people that people are leaving comments about. If anybody has any information or videos or anything of this Protect Our Women gang that is going around the streets in East Belfast at the moment, like it's happening actively, they seem to be harassing Black and minority ethnic men. If anybody has any information about that, please send it to me. I have a couple of videos, but I don't want to share anything until I'm sure. But yeah, these fellas are scumbags. They're absolute scumbags. They're using women as a vehicle for their violence.
And she was punched and a bicycle wheel was put into.
This is a horrendous attack on a child, like that video says, in broad daylight outside her home. And what is also horrendous is the guards' lack of action when the parents called them. So the guards came to the parents' house and basically shamed the mother and said, why were you not watching your child in the street? As if children shouldn't be allowed to play in the street. And they essentially ignored her concerns and did nothing. If you go and watch the rest of that video, you'll know that the people who attacked her daughter came back to the house and were intimidating her for the rest of the evening, staring into the house through the window and stuff to try and frighten them. It's also worth pointing out that a bicycle wheel being shoved into a child's genital area is a sexual assault of a child. A sexual assault of a child in the street, and the guards did nothing. Now, I've spoken on here before about the increase in racism in Ireland and bots and misinformation. I am not trying to in any way play down what's happened to this little girl. It's truly, truly horrendous. But we need to remember that what is happening with this rise in racist attacks in Ireland is partially, if not greatly, informed by the levels of misinformation coming from these bots that we are seeing. There are so many people that want to say that Ireland is not a racist country. Ireland is a very racist country. Racism is entirely normalised in Ireland. But the bots are making it so that people feel empowered and emboldened to display their racism, to attack people for racist aims. That was not the case before. And there needs to be intervention. There needs to be regulations on bots, because little girls are being sexually assaulted in the street in broad daylight and the guards are doing nothing about it. Long, long way to go. This is in relation to discussions around Irish unification. So yes, there is a long way to go. And I've had a lot of comments like this, or people talking about, you know, how many unionists are opposed to it and stuff, but people aren't taking into account the importance of political campaigning. Politics is an entirely campaign-based endeavour, right? You have to go out on the streets, knock on people's doors, talk to people. That's how change comes about, and it's always how change has come about. I think when we are online talking about these things, we exist in a vacuum and we forget that politics is a people-facing campaigning endeavour, like I say. And if you look at something like Repeal the 8th, right? People would have said the exact same thing about Repeal the 8th as in repealing the 8th Amendment, giving access to women in Ireland to abortion. People would have said the same thing. They would have said it's not possible. But people went out onto the streets and they mobilised, and we are so used to activism, political campaigning, whatever you want to call it, taking place solely online nowadays, where people just fight in comments with each other, that we've forgotten that offline, out and about in the streets, is how you create change. That's actually exactly what I talk about. If you don't know me, I'm Goodwill Cunting. I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, stroke the north of Ireland, and I'm using TikTok to get a book deal for my novel Influenced. It's come to my attention, because people have tagged me in it, that a content creator has taken my videos out of context about the Irish immigration crisis. So I post about the corporate colonialism of Ireland. That is, the 4 out of 5 homes purchased in Ireland last year was purchased by a corporate entity. And the Irish government is giving these corporate entities tax breaks in order to do this. Meanwhile, the far right, the racist far right, is on the rise in Ireland. And these people are blaming people of colour, immigrants to Ireland, for the difficulty in purchasing a home, when the actual problem is coming from the corporate colonialism of Ireland, the tax breaks that the Irish government are giving. Despite what this content creator has said, and she didn't mention the race element at all. My video was about the fact that 10,000 white Americans moved to Ireland last year, mostly upper middle class as well, moved to Ireland last year without any kind of backlash. Meanwhile, the Irish far right has been out in the streets protesting against immigration, and they've also been attacking people, burning people of colour out of their homes. Really bad things are happening. And yeah, I posted about the hypocrisy of the racist far right. I also post about, like I say, the corporate colonialism of Ireland and Anglo-American, that means British and American allegiances, which are interfering in Ireland and diminishing the pro-Palestine solidarity that Ireland has long held. So yeah, American havoc is most definitely happening in Ireland, and Irish people need to remember that we are first and foremost an island that stands with oppressed people, especially the people of Palestine. What is driving the rise of the far right in Ireland, and what does the far right think that people of colour have done to them? If you don't know me, I'm Goodwill Cunting. I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, stroke the north of Ireland, and I'm using TikTok to get a book deal for my novel Influenced. I post on here about loads of different topics, primarily being a woman in Ireland, but I also post about the rise of the far right in Ireland. And this comment says, not that racism is ever logical, but what exactly is driving the rise of racism in Ireland? And what do they, the far right, think that we, this person's a person of colour, have done to them? So it's a very, very complicated issue. I do have a podcast going into this somewhat. So if you go to the link in my bio, it says listen in all caps, and the episode is called Stop the Bots. But there's a couple of things at play here. I would say the primary problem is that Ireland is economically fucked. So the Irish government, firstly, Ireland's split into two countries. So the north of Ireland is still part of the UK, Ireland is still colonised, and that's important to remember. The Republic of Ireland, the government has given huge corporations tax cuts to come to Ireland in order to boost the economy, but we all know that that just leads to corporate colonialism. And this is manifested in loads of ways. For example, the government in Ireland was considering introducing water charges for what is a rainforest. Ireland is a temperate rainforest, although the trees got cut down by the British. So the fact that the government was thinking of introducing water charges is clearly absurd. Meanwhile, like thousands of litres of water an hour are being used for these like mega data centres that the Irish government have allowed corporations to build in Ireland for these tax cuts. Another huge problem is that the Irish government has no regulation on the purchasing of property. So 4 out of 5 homes in Ireland last year was purchased by a corporate landlord, which sounds like that could be one person with a couple of properties, but it's actually usually hedge funds or vulture funds, which is big groups of people who pull their money together and figure out how to make that money grow. And these people have decided that Ireland is a hot ticket for purchasing property. This has driven up the price of properties in Ireland, and it's led to a really rapid and rapidly worsening housing crisis. I know there's a housing crisis everywhere, but trust me, I have lived in a lot of different places. I live in London at the minute. I lived in the north of England, I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in New York, and the housing crisis in Ireland is pretty unprecedented in that the increase in rent has been astronomical in the last 10 years, which means that people are unable to buy homes and rent homes in the areas that they grew up in because corporate landlords are purchasing them. At the same time, Ireland has had an increase of immigration. Now, this is people of all different races. But what the far right are doing is they are facing their problems towards what they can see. And what they can see is an increase of people of colour. They're also very ignorant, these people, I have to say. So they're directing their anger towards vulnerable people, not the corporate landlords, not the rich Americans that are moving over, white Americans that are moving over, and not ultimately the government. It is the Irish government that is to blame for all of this. So while the government is selling Ireland, literally, to corporate entities, Irish people are disenfranchised, they are seeing wage stagnation, and they are struggling to rent and buy homes, and they're directing their anger and their vitriol towards vulnerable people. The last thing to note is, and I have a separate account all about this, 75% of online engagement in Ireland is bots, B-O-T-S, fake accounts. And it is my belief that those accounts are ran, for lack of a better word, by Anglo-American alliances. So you will know that Ireland is one of the political strongholds in like Western liberal democracy for Palestine. So these accounts that are pushing pro-American, pro-British, pro-Russian, yes, sentiment. Ireland has a lot of Ukrainian refugees. They are also having a terrible time with all of this. It's not actually only people of colour. that are facing problems from the far right. The Ukrainian refugees are also being attacked. So you have this huge grouping of these mega power countries that are trying to diminish solidarity for Palestine and trying to diminish solidarity with Irish people for Ukrainians. I have a whole podcast about this. Like I said, it's at the link in my bio. There's also an article that I've written called To Be Irish is to Protest, and it kind of breaks this down in more detail, especially in context of white American immigrants and the purchasing of Irish homes and the corporate colonialism in Ireland.
On videos about 10,000 Americans who have legally moved to Ireland.
My videos are about the hypocrisy of the Irish racist far right in directing their anger, venom and violence towards people of colour who are immigrants to Ireland and not the 10,000 white Americans who have arrived there. If you don't know me, I'm Goodwill Cunting. I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, strictly north of Ireland, and I'm using TikTok to get a book deal for my novel Influence. A lot of people have tagged me in this video and shared it to me as well, and if you follow me you will know that I have zero interest in being an influencer. Until I started posting on here for, like I say, my book deal, I had an Instagram account of like 100 people, and that is because I have been a journalist for the best part of 10 years. I've worked on a range of different subjects, but mostly on war, on Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and that also looked at Russian disinformation, and also I've worked on human rights abuses globally. So yeah, my videos are about the hypocrisy of the Irish far right. Unfortunately in Ireland we have a really aggressive rise of the Irish, what we're calling far right. We've never had this before in Ireland. We have of course had racism, but we've never had a sort of organised and a community really of far right racists. And these people are attacking people of colour on the streets on the regular. And I speak about this a lot. I have another account called Stop the Bots where I explore the rise of disinformation in Ireland and how this is enabling and normalising this kind of racist sentiment. I also have a number of videos on my profile about how racist Ireland is and how it's getting worse. And if you're from Ireland, you will know that yes, we have had 10,000 white Americans arrive in Ireland in the last year, and with that there has been no uproar, there's been no backlash, there's been no anger. However, like I say, people of colour are being burned out of their homes in Ireland. Now, as I have been a journalist, everything that I post comes with fact and stats, but I do understand that people who are content creators, and that is, you know, their main income, their main ambition and their main living, will be less likely to put in the research when they post online. However, I do want to point out to this creator that Ireland is the main stronghold of Palestinian solidarity within the global West. And it's been that way for a while. And with this rise of the far right, especially with an increase of white so-called Irish Americans who are very often conservative and very often do not have Palestinian solidarity, we are seeing that what was once a very normal position, that is solidarity with Palestine, is now becoming a more fringe, more left field idea. And like I say, I have a whole podcast on this. You can go to the link in my bio. The podcast is called Stop the Bots. But this comes from Anglo-American interference, that is Britain and America. In America, there is the lobbying group AIPAC, which off the top of my head, I can't really remember, but I think it's American, oh gosh, I can't remember. American Israeli lobbying group, basically. And this group have been interfering globally with countries that have Palestinian solidarity, but especially in Ireland. So yeah, like I say, I am very pro-immigration for everyone. I just want to make sure that people in Ireland have the same standards when it comes to white Americans coming in as it goes for people of colour. And also that we remember that at our core, we are a country and a people, regardless of race, that stand with Palestine.